Welcome to Diversity Conversations, where we engage in thought-provoking dialogue to identify leadership solutions to today's most challenging conflicts. Streamed live each week, Saturday 9:30 a.m. to 11 a.m. Hosted by Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Strategist and CEOs Eric Ellis and Tommy Lewis. Join us and add your voice to this engaging diversity conversation.
Good morning, Greater Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky, the United States, and the world. My name is Eric Ellis. I'm the president and CEO of Integrity Development Corporation, and I'm joined this morning by my good friend and fresh off of his vacation brother,
Tommy Lewis, president and CEO of Make It Plain Consulting. Good morning, Eric. Good morning. We made it.
Welcome back, Tommy. How was it, man?
Thank you, Eric. It wasn't less than 24 hours that I was in 81-degree weather on a crystal white beach with blue sand that you can see down maybe 12 to 15 feet to the bottom.
Wow.
With the breeze blowing through, just a nice breeze, just to knock off the heat, with a lot of good people around on vacation at a resort. And now I'm back in Cincinnati, and it's a different story.
Well, you and Santa Claus kind of came back on the same plane, didn't you?
Yeah, we did, Eric, on the same plane.
Yeah, I was just thinking about, I remember being in the second grade and over in Skyline Acres, and it snowed. And I said, oh my God, Santa Claus is going to be able to make it. It snowed.
So hopefully, with our public service workers, our professional public service workers, they can assist Santa Claus and everyone else that's trying to make it back to Southwest Ohio and actually the region. There were a lot of our colleagues in Chicagoland area shut down, Detroit, Cleveland shut down, going all the way over to the East Coast. But the wonderful thing, Eric, is that through this technology, not only you and I can talk, but we can always have guests. And I'm excited to have our guests for this morning.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Rachelle Burchette is going to be our guest this morning and talk to us about communication. She's a communication subject matter expert. And we know that people really need that right about now. I hope some people that are stuck in airports that have missed their planes or been rerouted are looking at this podcast, because, so often, man, they get up to those counters, man, it's about 7,000 or 8,000 flights that have been canceled, man. They're going to need some skills. And many people are missing their families. So this week for you was a vacation week for the most part.
This week was a vacation week. Decided to let the team off for the week as well. Yeah. But I was able to get away. Went down south first to Tampa, Florida, where the Cincinnati Bengals defeated the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on last Sunday. A great game. But definitely wanted to take a little rest and relaxation and, kind of connect again with myself, Eric.
That's good, Tommy. I love that, man. I love seeing that picture of you vacationing. I was here in the office plowing away. My team is off for this last week, the next week. And so, when the team is away, the cat will play. And so I got so inspired by you on the golf course out there, man, that I grabbed my clubs and brought them inside and started swinging in my office and broke one of my lights. I had a pitching wedge and I was swinging through it. And it was like, nice, man. I had this little disc, there's these flat golf balls. And I hit one, man, it smacked off the wall and bounced back. I said, oh, then I grabbed an 8-iron. Tommy, why did I not know that those 2 or 3 inches would make a difference there? All I heard was lights, boom, 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 dust going everywhere. I said, my team is going to come out. I can't even tell them how hard I was working, man. Swinging golf clubs in the office. But that's kind of how my week was. I also am working with a couple new clients. We were doing some IDI coaching this week. And also we're building, updating our website. And so stay tuned, looking forward to that. But we have a wonderful guest person who asked me, I've known for a number of years. She invited me to speak at Big Sandy Community and Technical College. And I was so impressed with her. We've done some work together that I wanted to introduce her to the community. And so without any further delay, we'll bring up Rachelle Burchette. How are you today?
Good morning. How are you guys? Staying warm, I hope.
Absolutely. I've got this heat just blasting right into my face right now. And I've got my hot chocolate.
Yes.
Good for you.
It's wonderful to meet you, Michelle. Rachelle, I'm sorry. Wonderful to meet you.
Absolutely.
It's nice to meet you too. Thank you.
Rachelle, why don't you start by just introducing yourself to our community? Tell them a little bit about your background personally, and maybe just a bit of your story. I think it's so helpful for people to kind of understand not just who we are professionally, what we do, but sort of the road that we took to sort of navigate to the place that we are today. So if you wouldn't mind just giving us a bit of your story.
Okay, well, on the personal side, my passion is a daughter of the King, working toward ministry. I have a women's ministry that I do too, always out to encourage and uplift women. I've written a couple of books. My favorite one is Get Your Purpose On, Girlfriend, which is all about everyone understanding their purpose in life and working toward that to help women and anyone actually realize they're here just to be more than just to be here. They have a purpose. And so throughout all of that, I've been working on that for about 8 years. The ministry has grown incredibly and wonderfully so. I've been placed in a position to where that I can also use my work and my other personal passion, which is communication, helping people understand people better in the workplace, not only in the workplace, but in personal and professional lives as well. And so that's kind of how I got here. I've stumbled onto a specific thing many, many years ago when working with a supervisor that I felt like I just wasn't getting through to. And then I realized, and several years ago, I trademarked the tagline, which I try to get everyone to remember. It's not personal, it's personality.
I saw that.
Yeah. Sometimes I think people get offended or put off by people's personality, and it's not personal really. It's just their traits and behavior, what makes them them. They're unique in their own way. So my goal in the workforce arena, and also dipping a little bit in ministry as well, is to help people learn to understand people better, not jump to conclusions, but to always coach themselves mentally. This is personality. It's not personal, it's personality.
Okay, awesome. Let me read sort of a statement that you put on your website that I thought was valuable. You say there that I am a creative business professional who delivers results with action-packed energy. I've certainly seen that. I lead by developing team members into leaders, thinking innovatively, creating strategic communication action plans, and finding solutions to workforce needs. That is your anchor statement. Talk about what that means to you and what that means in terms of some of the work that you do.
Well, when I took on this actual team that I've been with now for a little over 5 years, I started from scratch, having to build everything up. And I learned a long time ago that level 5 leadership means that if I walk away today, that team will be as successful as if I were already there. And so my goal is to build something transitional, something innovative, something that's going to be able to formulate together to create synergy. And basically that's kind of what we've done. So looking at that, being able to look at my team members, see where they need stretched, see where they need polished, and most importantly, putting them in a position that they love to come to work because of what they love to get to do every day. And so this has been a 5-year ongoing battle, or a transition uphill to understand people. And I would really honestly say this, I could put my team up against anybody because we've used the personality assessment, how to understand each other and really work together in the workplace, that we have a really strong team.
I think this is very interesting to me, and Eric will continue with questions, and I love this conversation because of late within my organization, the last year or so, and we have a number of team members. There has been a team member or two that has worked with the company for maybe a year over, and then there was a breakdown of communication. Mm-hmm. And to your point, I did not think it was personal. I thought it was personality. My first question would be, when personality shows up and there's a conflict in personality, how do you best communicate against or over that barrier, that wall of personality differences?
Well, that's a great question. I will take you back to a personal story to that supervisor that I just thought I was this personality that was a networker, the blues hold the world together. I was creative and had all this energy. But my supervisor, he was not really, he was a different personality. I would call him the analyzer, the thinker. So every time that I would go to him with all this great ideas and I was so excited, I left feeling deflated because I felt interrogated. So after doing a lot of research about this, understanding that that was just his personality. So what I've learned is, first of all, it's not about me and it's not about you. It's about what we're trying to get from the other individual and how can we best relay that information to get what we need. So I understood that his questions were only needed because he needed to make a decision, and I wasn't giving him what he needed. So I truly tried this. I went and got the answer to every single question he could possibly ask me before I went the next time. And when I went to him, he asked me all these questions. I had the answer. And before you know it, I mean, I was walking out of there getting things finished. And to add to that story, I would send a really long email. It would take a week or more. And he would finally say, "Your question's what?" I was like, "It's all in the email." But I was missing that communication piece. So the breakdown is understanding the four styles and learning how to cope with those things. So, for example, if I have someone that's green now or an analyzer or thinker, it feels like I'm being interrogated. I coach myself. It's not personal. It's not personal. It's personality. And to realize to take a breath and to slow down. And then going along that lines with my team, if I have to ask those questions, I will immediately say, "I'm going to be green with you right now." And I can feel that wall just start to go down because they understand it's a way of mechanism, me communicating with them for us to get an answer or solve a problem.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Now, let me ask you this, Rachelle. So, why don't you talk about the instrument that you've developed? Because you've been utilizing this for a few years, but I think it'd be helpful for people to understand the types and maybe even the colors that coincide with those, and what
Perfect.
sort of inspired you to develop such an instrument.
So I happened onto a personality assessment years ago, probably about 10 years more, and it was very complicated to score. Then there's also a lot of the other very in-depth instruments like DISC and those things, but I can never remember acronyms and letters. And so the one thing I said, I want to make it simple so that people can understand. We've been using primary colors our entire life, so let's just make it about colors. And so this is a 10 question little assessment that kind of asks specific questions and it lets you know whether you're an analyzer, a driver, a thinker, or a networker, and so, or an organizer. And those let us know, for example, our blue people, in all the trainings I've done, probably over the last 15 years, the majority of the world is blue. And I like to say they are the glue that holds the world together, the camaraderie. They need to feel included. They want to be a team player. They don't like negativity. And then you have our goals, which is our to do listers, our organizers, our goal setters. And they get really frustrated when people don't show up on time or don't do their job that they're supposed to do. And then we have our drivers who are the fly by the seat of their pants. They get things done, but they move at the speed of light sometimes, and that frustrates the gold and the green, which is the analyzers and the thinkers. And the analyzers and thinkers, which will be the green style, they need a lot of data and research to make decisions because the thing is, they're making decisions that's going to impact the years ahead. Where the drivers, they want to answer now. And so there's so many frustration lines as the blue, the connectors, they usually get along with everybody in the organization. And then you have those varying parts. So you have a dominant color and you have a secondary color most often.
Okay.
And that's how we work to coincide together.
Now, do you believe that people have all of these? We're sort of on a continuum, but your assessment is identifying our primary and secondary.
Yes. And I will tell you this, as I had, when I was working for the supervisor that made me want to do something like this, he will tell you today we had the best relationship because I finally got him, right? But what I found out is that I changed my style at work to be able to get what I needed from him. So then I became a more organized, methodical person, which was out of my realm because I was the creative, energized person. It didn't take away squash my creativity, but I learned how to work in that environment that helped us get what we needed to do. What I find is most people don't want to bend or be flexible like that. They want it their way and they're not really wanting to consider how we can use these strengths together.
That's powerful. Let me talk to us about some organizations that may have been experiencing conflict and how this tool was helpful in people trying to work together in more productive ways.
Well, one of my favorite stories is I did a training for an electric company, and there was a gentleman there, and he was the orange, which is the driver, the one who just wants to get it done. Let's just go to work and make it happen. When we did the assessment, he had an entire team of 15 blue people who have feelings and need nurtured and need to be cared about. That's been, oh my goodness, probably 10 years ago. He still wears the orange bracelet to remind him, because I give everyone color bracelets, of the personality style he is. It's a funny story. So the next day I went back to the organization to pick up some things, and his secretary was in there. He walked to the door and he said, "Hey, do you have one of those jump drive things?" And she started in this whole story how she was discussing with her husband, and she was trying to figure out what to get. And I said to her, "Be orange right now." And she said, "No." He goes, "Thank you. That's all I needed to know." So it was really helpful to see, give people what we need. And when you get this lingo down in your organization, I can say, "Be orange with me today," or "Let's be green," or "Let's be blue about this." And let me share another story too. I had somebody coming to work for me, super blue, super blue. And I had a person on the right was a green, and the person on the left was a gold. And the one young lady came to me, she said, "I don't know if this is going to work." And I was like, "Why?" And so I pulled out the assessment that talked about all the things that this personality style needed. And I said, "Are you giving her those things?" And she said, "I'm not." And that was transformational, because she then started to recognize, I need to be giving her these to get where we need to go. But sometimes we're so laser focused and driven just to get to the end that we're forgetting about the people and the personalities that really need our nurturing, our care, or our quickness, or whatever it might be.
Rachelle, have you found that at times before someone may take your assessment, that they may misassess themselves, and then they take the assessment and there's something different? They may be even in denial, like, no, that's not me. Can you talk
Yeah.
about
Yes. So here's one things that I try to do. I try to tell people when they take the assessment, first of all, I tell them to be truthful, and they look at me like, "Why would I lie?" But sometimes we don't want to be seen as what we really are. We want to really sugarcoat that a little bit, right? The other thing that I found is I tell them, take this quiz as if to your job. Because what I found out, a lot of people are different at home, but their
that?
job caused them to be organized or methodical, where at home they may be a lot more fun loving and energetic and creative. So, or a quick example is one of the girls that works for me. She's very analytical, organized, but she loves to go skydiving and climb hills. So those two aren't compatible, really, if you think about it. So in doing so, I do that. And then I actually did have one instance where, when we talked about the stressful behaviors, the one person said, "I don't like my behavior. I don't like that. Am I really like that?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, sometimes you are like that." So it's hurtful to, but I always think about this. Constructive feedback is like medicine. It never tastes good, but it makes you feel better. So it makes you behave better or understand better. And so when people understand, I could be this way, how can I work to better do that? So the assessment also helps with, what stresses your personality styles? And am I causing you stress because of what I'm doing? And so making people aware that they affect everything in the culture of your organization or your team. It's very important. What we bring in gets stuck to us. I always bring in Play-Doh, and I have everybody take pieces of Play-Doh and share it with everybody, and ask them to mix it together. And then I ask them, "Could you extract that if you wanted to?" Well, the answer is no, but that's what happens with personality, culture, stress. All of that is stuck together in an organization. So we want to be mindful of what we bring in and how we interact with others.
Yeah, this is interesting because, what's also interesting is that a lot of times people think that they are completely different at home than they are at work. And some of the criticisms that they get at home are from people who are empowered to tell you the truth. And
Yeah.
so when you're in the workplace, you may be operating with some of the same shortcomings and challenges, but they may not be as empowered to sort of give you the same kind of feedback.
Yes.
What are some questions that people can to ask to sort of be able to diagnose it? Because first of all, it'd be excellent for any of our community out there who is interested in a consultant that can work with your team around communication types and understanding those, I highly recommend Rachelle Burchette, because she just does a fun seminar. It's engaging, interactive. People are laughing, having a good time, and learning some things. So first of all, I want to sort of recommend that. But if people, not everybody that we come across is going to be able to take the assessment, there's some things that people can look for that might help them better understand people that are different from them in the workplace.
Well, absolutely. First of all, let me take you to someone's office space, which I love this because it's really a great identifier. If you walk into the networker, the glues, if you walk into their office, there's lots of family photos, there's trips and little trinkets and things that are so good, and they love to tell their story. Okay, so those are things. If you're not blue or the networker, the greatest thing for you to do is to walk in that office and say, "Hey, tell me about this." They immediately feel included and needed and heard. Now, if you walk into someone that has a gold office, I'm telling you, everything is organized, the pencils, everything is in line. There's not anything misplaced on their desk. It's so organized and so neat. People are often reorganizing, straightening, making sure all the books are equal to each other on the shelf. And then your green, sometimes, now not always, sometimes there's lots of, it's an organized, chaotic mess, but they know where everything is because there's data and research and logs and magazines. They still like that paper sometimes. And then the orange, you can hardly tell they've been there because they don't even sit down long enough to warm the seat because they're always out doing things. And what I love about this, when you're working with people, so my team they become experts by working with me because a lot of times I'm very orange because of a lot of the responsibilities. And so it's funny because they have learned to go from conversation to conversation with me.
Right.
One of my team members said, "What car are you in?" "I'm still in the car back there. How did you move cars on me?" So, and then what happens is I need to learn to slow down and go back to what they need. Sometimes I get excited and I forget and leave everybody behind. But when you're talking to a person that is quick and a lot of times frank would be a thing. For example, one morning I was having a bad hair day, and for a girl, that's just the most horrible thing to have. Was talking to one of my blue networker friends, and she was saying, "It looks good,"
Right.
but one of my driver friends was walking by, didn't know what we were talking about. She says, "What is wrong with your hair, girl?" And I'm like, okay, so if you want the truth, go to the drivers. They're going to drive you to the truth. Okay. So looking at that, people who are frank and don't have a filter, maybe that's the orange personality. Okay. They have a lot of flair. The analyzers, the greens, are going to ask lots of questions. You feel interrogated immediately. Okay. And then, of course, your blues are the relational storytellers. You ask them how they are, and they go from, "I got up this morning, tripped on my dog, spilled my coffee." They tell you they live in color, the whole story. So as you're communicating with people, I get tickled a lot. Sometimes somebody on my team will say, "You're analyzing me, aren't you?" I'm like, "I'm really not. It's a natural thing." Because it's important to me for people to be heard. It's important for me for people to feel included at work. And if I'm going to make that happen, I'm going to have to be willing to stop and think about what they need as an individual to make our team inclusive.
Let me ask you a follow-up question. So who should be the one to take the lead on trying to identify whether my role is to better understand you or for you to better understand me?
Well, I think
Because my experience is that most people, so Stephen Covey says, seek first to understand, then to be understood. Yeah. But most people are seeking to be understood. And most of our conflict comes from sometimes a pity party that people aren't understanding me. So what recommendations? It's nice if everybody tries to understand everybody. But what's your thoughts about, especially in a workplace where there's a power dynamic?
Well, we deal with power dynamics quite a bit. But one thing I learned, and I try to work with my team, is there's something beautiful about giving away credit or to drop the rope. If you're not tugging, people can't pull. And what I found when you're dealing with power struggles in an organization, a lot of times there is a negative equity inside of them that they're needing something, and that's why there's the struggle. So as I work with people, you're right. Sometimes people want to be only understood if not understand people. But Eric, it's right down to actually coaching all the time Now let's think about this. This person really needs this. And so is it in the perfect world for large organizations? And I tell people all the time, it's something you have to literally buy into and believe in. And I've watched it change. My youngest son is a to-do lister. If you write it on a list, he's going to get it done. It's about us making the effort, though, to change how we communicate effectively to get what we need to move forward instead of being stuck in a rut, you know. And so it's been helpful when I see conflict at work. Let's think about, why are we having conflict? And if you have a person who doesn't want a lot, or for example, sometimes the green, the analyzers, the thinkers, they don't want to be touched. But if you've got a blue, you want to hug somebody, you know. So we have this ongoing thing in the office. One of the girl who has on her desk chaos coordinator, she takes care of me. I'll say, "Can I have a hug today?" And she'll say, "Yeah." Asking permission to enter that space, but realizing if I tell people that all the time, it's really not personal, people. It's just how God created us so unique and differently. And we don't want to shade any of that off. We want everybody to be themselves. And by doing that, it's helping to understand. And when we understand people, we come more to understand ourselves sometimes too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Rachelle, that was fantastic. That actually answered a question that I had in my mind. With Eric and I, in our organizations, we do a lot of organizational climate assessments and culture
Yeah.
assessments.
Yeah.
And typically at the top priority from the findings is lack of communication.
Yeah.
Right? What is communication?
Well, so basically, it's the exchange of information to get something, right? So here's the thing. I want to share this with you too. I learned this when I was taking some of my master's classes, and I have incorporated this at work. What I found is we're so rushed and so hurried that we stop taking time to talk, to listen. So what I've done is I've created this maybe 10 or 12 questionnaire, and every 3 months to 6 months, I sit down with every individual team member and I say, "Hey, what's going well for you right now? Tell me with a one-word adjective or a hashtag that describes our team. What's not going well for you right now? What is the biggest roadblock our team has?" And you know what I've been able to watch? I've been able to watch every single one of those things deteriorate, and then it's something else. And because what's happening to me for culture temperature checking is that if that same problem is reoccurring every 3 months, we've got a problem. And I always challenge my team: open door policy, but only if you have a solution to bring with you. Because what I found out is a lot of times people want to vent, but they don't want to solve. And if they've taken time to create a solution, right, and they come in, then I'll say, "Well, great, what would you do about the situation?" And they said, "Well, this is what I would do." And what I'm really trying to do with this team is train them to do what I would do if I weren't there. And the only way that I could do that is give them flexibility and freedom to make some decisions that we can fix if it's the wrong decision, because we do learn, when we fall, we're not falling, we're really growing and strengthening that. So helping them, teaching them to think. It's just not coming to me for the answers. What would you do? It's about just having communication. And it's so simple that it's insane, I guess. It's so simple that we overlook just the simple thing of that tool.
Yeah, I love that. Let me ask you this, Rachelle. Reading the book Blink. Blink talks about, in that book, it talks about our brain's powerful ability to consume a lot of information and to make very quick, accurate decisions. I mean, I was just blown away by what the power of the brain to make very quick and accurate decisions. An example that they gave was that you could show college students, they were showing them videotapes of professors and only showing them seconds of the video. And they said that those students were able to judge the effectiveness of the professor at the same level as students that had been in their classes all semester long.
Yes.
And that's pretty powerful. But they said the only thing that throws off our brain's ability to make quick, accurate decisions is bias. And so I want to ask you, I don't know how much thought you've given to that, but how does bias impact our ability to work effectively across different personality styles?
I think it affects a lot. And again, in my recent master classes, I thought it was really cool because there's a website that you can take all these bias tests and say, oh, I'm not biased, and then I'm like, am I really? Because what I was a youth leader for a while, but what I really found out through the test that I really enjoyed working with older people than younger people. I'm like, that's not me. I like working with the youth, but taking these little tests, it does make a difference. And sometimes I think it's how we were raised, our culture, what we've heard people think, all those things are meshing into our brain. And I did write down a couple of facts so I wouldn't get it right. But talking about the brain, which is my second favorite thing to talk about, is there's 11 million bits of information every second coming into our brain. And when I teach people this, I think all people in this room are thinking all these thoughts at this certain time. And then it says there's 9 bits of negative information for every one positive bit getting through. So our brain is kind of wired to just be a little bit negative.
Right.
And then there is this thing called the mind gap, which is one of my favorite things that I've worked really hard to help people understand. Science says that there's a half a millisecond in our brain from the time we have a thought to the time we add an emotion to it. What they say is once you add an emotion, negative or positive, it's almost like a freight train, impossible to turn around. So there's a lot of coaching before you start to think about people don't let that train, that locomotive get away from you. And so in the customer service ratio, it takes 7 good encounters after 1 bad encounter to make a difference. So I tell the people at work, listen, sometimes we don't have 7 encounters, but working with as leadership and management is if a person on your team has a bad incident with you, it's going to take you 7 positive encounters to get that to relieve you. I had one of my team members, I was so proud of her. There was a student that came in and she was trying to get them helped. And it was really not even her job, but she was going out of the way to make this happen. And what was really unique about it was that she literally went so far out of her way that she said, I may not have 7 more times to make this happen.
Okay. Technical difficulty. I guess we got shut down there.
Okay. There we are. We're all back now. So back to what I was saying was this girl, she was going out of her way to help a student, which wasn't really her job. But she said, I may not have 7 more times to make it right for this person. So it's about making it right for people, and then the positivity ratio, it's 3 positive thoughts to counteract 1 negative. We have got to do a lot of brain coaching and changing the way we think with like a gratitude challenge, whatever it may be, to utilize these tools, because the brain is the most fascinating thing, how it corresponds with things, perception and bias, like you said. Sometimes we make split decisions and don't think about what we're thinking about or how we even thought about it or how we even got here.
Right. Tommy?
So, Rachelle, I'm going to throw you a little bit of a curveball.
Okay.
You've inspired me.
Okay.
During my vacation this week, I had an opportunity to experience a mentalist. And the mentalist wasn't a magician, someone who had the mastery of persuasion. And so this individual stood up on the stage. There were maybe 70 people in the audience, and he would have a conversation. He was just talking, and time and time and time again, when he was handing out a deck of cards or having people take a look at a book and go to a page and look for the most difficult word or the easiest word, time and time again, when they said the word, he had already written it down, right? It was absolutely mind-boggling. I share that because you're talking about the brain, and he was saying that he's not a magician. He's not all these things. He simply is communicating certain messages in a pitch, tone, or volume to help people or to really persuade people to think something. And he said that some of the best salespeople do it all the time.
Yes.
And I was in my seat literally jumping to the roof, like, oh my goodness, I'm getting what's happening, but I don't understand how he's doing it. When you talk about communication, how do we master the art of communication for a win-win, not to take advantage of people, because that's not godly, right?
Yes, exactly.
But how do we empower people through the art of communication while at the same time kind of inspiring us to understand the power of our mind and what we can stop or start if there's some negative thoughts?
Well, that's a great question too, because there is a fine line between master manipulative and then master leading. And so sometimes it's leading the conversation into a direction that you want it to go to. And you're right. It is not right. It is not godly for us to use it in that sense. But thinking about I guess it all comes down to heart, and then how he did that. I don't know if you ever watched the old show. I'm probably dating my age, The Mentalist. I love watching things like that. But a lot of times people have telltales, or I get my team to think about, or people that I train, body language tells so much. How you get people into a position to have those conversations like this here. I love this. It's called steepling, for example. And my dad does it all the time. And you know what steepling means? It means that I really know more about the conversation than you do, but I'm going to let you finish. So there's so many things about steepling. Yes, like this right here. Yeah,
I need to use that a lot more.
You need to use that a lot. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, and then things about, like, one time I had a supervisor that every time we were talking and he liked my idea, he would do this. Yeah. And then when I would lose him, he would do this. So here's the thing. Again, we're a microwave generation. We want things immediately. We're not paying attention to detail anymore. I do this exercise with people, just so you know. I have a picture of these people lined up, and I ask people to give them an adjective. What do you think they don't even know them? And what I teach them is, like, we've already assumed something about a group of people that we didn't know anything about, but you gave them an adjective. As we finish, we talk about them. We talk about each person. At the end, I ask them to come back up and to create exactly what that looked like. You should hear the arguing, or, not talking, saying, was there 6 people? There were 7 people. How many people? People can't even, and we spent so much time. Our brain is not being trained to think about. So one of the questions I ask when I interview people is, what color of car did you park beside of when you came in today? And a lot of people don't. So it's about, I guess when you ask the question, that's a really hard thing to say a total overall answer, but it's got people that want to be invested in heart and in life. Those are the things that are so important. And you're the game changer. You're the person that's changing the culture. People will mimic what you do when they see the results you're getting. And I feel like that they bend and twist. Sometimes there is that power struggle and that pull, but when you learn to lay down the rope and recalculate in your brain, why is this person behaving this way? What is going on at home? Is there some underlying effects also that's integrating here? So there's so many things like that really you just have to want to be invested in people and yourself.
Right. I want to say welcome to our community. Ty Austin, so glad that you've joined us from Atlanta. Ken Wilson, we're grateful to have you back, man, and joining us. And Steve Sanders, we haven't seen him in a while. He's joining us today. Community, if you have questions there for Rachelle Burchette, you certainly can place them here. What advice would you give families as they go through the holiday season? Because here we are preparing those that are with their families for maybe even a meal tomorrow, or gift giving, and sometimes disappointment around that. What are some suggestions that you can offer people as we sometimes get triggered by the same old things in our communication? How do people avoid that?
Well, first of all, let me tell you something I have learned is we've got to quit setting high expectations for people. What happens is people fail us all the time and they don't even know it, because we've set the bar so high for them. It's not fair to them that we've set the bar high. So I always say, lower the expectations of people, increase your expectations in God. First of all, you're less disappointed. And when they surprise you, then it's like, wow, that's awesome. What happens when we set false expectations for people and we don't share it with them? We just assume they should know better to do that, but they really don't know better, because that's just who they are. Right. So it's about not building walls, but tearing those walls down. And when you lower that expectation, not meaning that you don't have faith in them, but you can love them more easily. You can get along with them more easily. Like if there is someone in your family that's coming and they always do this every year, right? Why do you expect anything different? Because they've always, so why don't you get your mindset focused on, this is who they are, and I want to just love through them. You know, sometimes we have to understand it's the things in the world that has a hold of people that cause them to behave this way. And so there again, you've got to love all the way to the soul. You've got to get past the things that really just aggravate you and frustrate you, because at the end of the day, that's what it boils down to be the person to offer love regardless. You don't have to like what they do, but you can love them through any circumstance.
Rachelle, I think you're speaking words of wisdom to myself and the community. And when you were just sharing that, I'm thinking honestly that's work. One, that's a lot of work, and at times it can be painful to have this type of empathy, lowering one's expectation, seeing and hearing and experiencing them where they are, and you're like, this is the kind of the 20th Christmas that you've been doing the same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's hurting now. Can you talk a little bit more about, how to ease the suffering of understanding this?
I think how to ease the suffering is to understand the suffering and knowing where you are with this. Why are you suffering? Why is it painful for you? Why is it hurting you? Is it because it's affecting you and how you want things to be? Christmas isn't the way you want it to be. And sometimes I feel like that most people, as you always say this, the people who are hurting themselves. And so, but it's so easy. Let me tell you, I've dealt with my son with addiction for 10 years. I know all of those triggers and those things, and every family has them. And sometimes I wouldn't want to say, to be a peacemaker, not a peace taker. Like, it's up to us to push that peace out to people. And when we really think about the big picture, right? So I'm going to give you a biblical scripture that has helped me tremendously. Okay. Exodus 14:14. If you remain silent, the Lord will fight for you. It's the control.
Oh, no. You got to say that again because everybody needs to hear that one.
Okay, so Exodus 14:14. If you remain silent, the Lord will fight for you. Why is it that we feel that we have to interject so much? Sometimes when there is argument or frustration going on, if you do remain silent, when you think about this, if you've had an argument with someone and you're replaying it in your mind, you're hearing everything and you're getting impact. But what if that person never argued back with you? The only voice you're going to hear is yours. And sometimes my aunt used to say this, the least said is the easiest mended. And is it really worth it at that moment to add more fuel? But I always say this too, I made this up, don't get engaged, you'll get enraged every time. Just let it go. And at the grand scheme of the thing, whatever function you're having with your family, is it really worth all of that to be building up? And here's the true story. We've got to start forgiving people.
Right.
Yes.
Absolutely.
That's what it boils down to, absolute forgiveness.
Right. Rachelle, I know you've got a tremendous passion for working with women, especially Christian women. You've written a book in that space. Talk to us about a couple of things. Number one, why you feel there's a calling in your heart to work with women. I would say that there is this need that we teach a lot about diversity and inclusion, all like that, but there's a real value in people being able to sometimes spend time with groups that are in gendered groups or cultural groups.
Yeah.
What's the power and value of that work? Why is that work of such interest to you? And how has this communication sort of message and expertise sort of fit into that work?
Well, it's a great question. Also, I'm getting ready to lean into just a little bit, just so you know. It's called Standing Your Ground of Grace in the World of Work. And it is for Christian women or women that are coming together with my Bible study. I have a Bible study or a group called Salty Sisters Speaking. We've been doing this for 8 years, and it's about bringing women together. But what God gave me over 8 years ago was you feed them a meal and you feed their soul. Because women rarely these days get anybody to cook a meal for them, to fellowship and just do it all. And for 8 years, God's provided the ability for me to be able to do that. What I see is women changing, women getting hope again, and simply the truth is understanding the word and how powerful and the authority that it has in their life. Getting back, so writing the books that I wrote, the last one, my favorite one is Reserved. It's about, in scripture, in Psalm 23, 23:5, it says that he will prepare a table for you in front of your enemies. I always thought about that being like, that's right, they're going to watch me eat. But that's not what it's about. It's about a place that I could run to, that he's prepared. It's reserved just for me and him to draw all of that food and to throw the world outside. You can hear the enemy is not going to disappear. He's still going to circle you. But at that table, that is a seat for only you and him. And the most important thing is quit giving people seats at your table, because what happens is they're going to eat what he's prepared for you, and you're going to be left empty again. And then the other caveat to that, I say, is quit pulling your chair up to other people's table. That's not your seat. And it's really getting back to that personal one-on-one relationship with God and involving yourself in that intimacy with him and letting him lead and guide you. So getting those groups of women together, what I've seen is people praying for people encouraging people. I've recently just started doing a group called PALS, Parents of Addicted Loved Ones, a support group for parents who have addicted loved ones. I never had that in 10 years with all the experience that I have dealing with my son and addiction. It's been tremendous to be able to offer, while it's not booming yet, but to be able to offer people the safe place to come to talk about why they feel like they're falling apart. And my thing is, I just want to be a master encourager to say, we don't want to waste one drop of that blood, because we were bought and paid for and we are living free, but we choose to still stay in the cage, and the enemy knows that.
Yes.
And so we've got to break free and start walking in that authority that he has given us here on this earth to do, and breaking other people free too.
And I'll say something about this thing, and then Tommy, you can jump right in. I would say that I've observed my wife, Judy, be that vessel that God has set a table for her, a place for her, at the table in front of her enemy. And the way that she leads her life with humility and kindness and sweetness in the workplace, sometimes I think she thinks it makes her a target to be overrun. But I've seen it make her stronger and more difficult to overrun, because there's not very many people to talk to about her. Well, because she's kind everywhere and she's loving people everywhere. And she's got almost a fan club that starts to rise up around the place. And it begins to be harder to say critical things about her. And that's just being kind, sweet, loving, helpful, humble, and competent.
Yes. Well, there is power in humility. And the greatest example that have ever been given, it is like having a horse with the reins. It's strength under control. So you have the strength and power to be whatever, but holding that under control is so powerful, and it is contagious. It's contagious in the workplace. And you're right. Your wife, that has made her stronger than she probably could ever imagine herself being, because of who she is.
Right. And people want to work with her. They want to work for her. And before you know it, you look up and God has, because of your heart and because of the way in which you communicate to people, and that gets back to your communication. Sometimes if even people are talking crazy at you or about you, but you keep communicating in healthy, respectful ways, that too can change the environment oftentimes, can it?
Yes, it can. And the famous scripture about, no weapon formed against me shall prosper. But here's the thing, what people forget. See, people always quote a scripture, but they forget the beginning or the ending of it. But the last part that says that, and God will vindicate them in front of you. And so when you release that power and you lay it down, it's like, not my job to do this, and let the Lord do those things. I mean, he's taught me so much through so many trials and adversity. But the thing is that when you let go and let him lead, your life is not that the world is going. I'm getting ready to do a study called Desperation Turning to Desire. We get in desperate situations and we chase the desperate situation, but not the solution, which is God, who is the solution. So we get so caught up, and whatever has our mind has us, right? And whatever you're giving so much attention to, why are we giving power to something that literally we can't fix or control? When you start to give that power tug of war up with personal things in your life and give it to the one who's the master controller of all things, you can be more peaceful. and just, like this holiday season is not what we anticipated to be, all this illness I had plans. But you know what I learned? I'm able to take care of my family when they're here. It's about not letting the enemy cloud my mind with what you tried. This is what you wanted. It didn't happen. Aren't you upset? No, I'm not upset, because the people that I love are here and I'm nurturing them. And so it's about perspective, changing how we see things.
Yeah, yeah. Once again, Rochelle, this is phenomenal. I think this is mastery and communication. Not only the things that you're sharing, tapping into scripture, tapping into your own lived experiences and being vulnerable in that space. And I would like to say thank you. But also, full transparency are basically selfishly the thoughts that I'm having when you're sharing, when you're speaking. I'm able to see my own self and communicating with myself. And like Eric had mentioned with his wife, I'm thinking of my wife, and there are friend circles that she has that they have rich conversations. I think they're growing. I think that they have a lot of fun, but I don't pull my chair up to that table.
Right.
Right. And it's not that I don't want to, but literally as you were talking, I'm thinking that's her safe zone.
Yeah.
That's her space, her friends. And I need to kind of be quiet and fall back. Right. And so I think that that's the lesson among many that I'm going to take away from today's conversation is being silent, going through kind of the processes that you talked about, and allowing first self-communication.
Yeah.
Self-reflection and self-communication before engaging, which leads to enraging. Right?
That's right. One of the things I'll share too that I thought about is that every person that you may have fought with or that you've experienced, there's probably something good that they've done in your life before. And what I try to do is when the enemy wants to start that bitterness and that anger, see, there's only one letter difference in the word bitter and better. Okay. So you got to think about that, because what happens is when we're allowing those things in our heart, it's taking up space that God should have residence in.
Mm-hmm.
So like no vacancy, no rooms available here for bitterness, anger, stress, and those things. But what happens is if you try to start thinking about that one thing that person did that was so great, and you let your mind build on that person at that moment that was nurturing or loving or kind or something they did, think about them, that situation when you're thinking. Here's the other thing too. I tell people in my mind, I'm just going to wash your feet. Because what happens is when you change your position and you become kneeling and you start unlacing dusty shoes and worn out laces and soles, and you start to remove socks and to wash someone's feet, you're looking up at them, not down at them. It's all about the perspective of our position and the power that we give them. Then there's something about when you wash someone's feet, that's humility. You get to be there. So in your mind, if you could think about, we don't know where their feet's traveled or what they've gone through. But how can at this very moment that I'm sitting here, I'm going to kneel and look up at you instead of looking down at you?
That's powerful, Rachelle. Let me ask you this. As I listen to you here, it is clear how powerful and passionate you are about the work that you are doing. I'd like you to just talk a bit about what is your vision for your future, because I would say that I don't know how often anybody says this to you, but it's clear to me that you have an anointing to do what you're doing, that literally the things that you've learned have become a part of you, and they just sort of, evolve. They come forward out of you. What is the purpose? What do you see your purpose? I could see you being sort of a global consultant, evangelist type that's inspiring people to find their best life. And so I'd like to sort of hear you talk about that for you, and then how people that, as we end this year and prepare for the new year, that's a time where everybody's beginning to think about their own goals, their dreams, their visions for their lives. Talk to us about what you see in your future and how we can pray for you, and then how others might sort of begin to prepare for their new year.
Well, that's a wonderful question. Thank you. And all the things above, yes. But there is one thing that I love coffee. Do y'all like coffee? I mean, I just love coffee. Okay. So I have on my vision board over here, Habakkuk 2:3, write it down and it will come to pass, or basically just wait for it, right? We love to learn to wait for things. But there is a building that I really want to get here. And it's in a pretty good location, not congested. I want to have a coffee shop called She Brews. Okay, not Hebrews, but now if I could get a baker, I would do Hebrews and she bakes, right? So that's what I would do. But I want it to be a place where that I can work with women in recovery, bringing them in to help them run this coffee shop, teaching them leadership skills, communication skills, creating them to be ambassadors to work, go back to work, to be re-entered into our. Let's face it, the workforce right now, there's about as many people in recovery as there is vacant jobs, but we're biased. And I understand because what I've experienced going through these things. But if we don't take time to work with the lost souls that are being controlled by something else, my son gave me this definition. It stuck with me forever. He said, the next time that you get an itch, don't scratch it, because that's what addiction feels like. He said, Mom, if your back is itching, you'll do anything you can. And while you're doing that, nothing that's going on in front of you matters. And he said, that's what it feels like. So every time I get an itch, I always like, how long can I go? How long can I go? But what I want to do is teach women that they have a purpose. Get your purpose on, girlfriend, and teach them skills and let them know, because what happens is in this environment, they need immediate gratification, letting them icing cupcakes or serve people that come through the drive-through. But in order to do that, either I have to have angel funders or I have to be able to be on a speaking circuit to supplement my income, because I'm not going to make that kind of money selling coffee every day. But it's about ministry. It's about, and I want the venue to be a place where if a woman comes by and says, I'm falling apart, let's go pray. Let's go to the war room and let's pray for you. Being that place, that circuit for women to stop in and just be encouraged. That's what this world is falling apart. And if we all don't start putting our boots on and putting on the armor of God fully every day, so that we can stand right there,
Right.
in the gap for women who aren't able to stand at that moment. That's what I want to do, Eric.
Right. So here I got it. So here's what hit me while you were talking.
Okay.
I want us to schedule a Zoom for all the people that you are connected to, the ministries that you're connected to, that we can have you present this vision to those individuals. Because I was thinking about their SHRM needs to be connected to your vision, because they're doing all of this, trying to get ex-offenders and, people like that into the workplace. And so that's a block of people that would be interested. All these churches should be, what you're talking about is a no-brainer. That doesn't take any, I don't have to go into my prayer closet to understand the value of that. And so I would say, let's look at trying to accelerate the pace of that happening, because that's a worthy vision. And those of us that are connected to you need to use some of our influence to bring people that we know to that. Because Darlene Bishop, who is the pastor of Solid Rock here in Monroe, Ohio, is a powerful woman who has built houses for unwed mothers and things like that. Has done phenomenal work in that space. She can single-handedly make this happen. And so I'd like to sort of see if we can't just bring that into fruition and give you an opportunity to present the vision that you have, because I think that is so powerful that you shouldn't be saying that to people and them just saying, I'll pray for you, good luck.
Right. Yeah, well, I appreciate that, because it does take the multitude of people to bring something together. And it's not about me. It's about being able to give back to these people.
We know that.
Hurting people.
Yes. Tommy?
And I would add as well, Eric, that we have a community that joins us every week, and they are passionate about seeing other people's dreams come true, their motivations come true, their vision boards become realized.
Yeah, that's right.
And so it's a lot of selflessness where folks say, hey, let's be blue and connect and network and then step away, right? And so let us leverage the color spectrum that Rachelle is mentioning with us today and learning more about it, and really communicating and bridging that gap. So in addition to prayer, let's leverage our resources, whatever that may look like, and say, let me just pour into you, and then I'll kind of keep it moving, because we know through God it will be reciprocated. We will be poured into. So that is my ask of our community as well.
Right.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that more than you know, because that is just a true dream and vision that I have had for some time now.
Right. Well, I see that coming alive. And it is so easy to understand that that's a God thing and that there's a need out there. This is not in any way about you. This is about the people that are in need of being able to fulfill or realize their potential. And we don't do that outside of individuals having them. I mean, there's a whole lot that you could think about. There's a whole lot of visions that you could have. That one right there is clearly of God, a worthy vision, and one that you are equipped to do. I mean, you're equipped to knock that one out of the park. So I want to be able to connect you with some people for one-on-one conversations, but I also want you to think about this Zoom event that we can sort of put a campaign together, almost like a GoFundMe kind of thing.
Oh, that'd be awesome. So the other thing you need to pray about is the building that I want. I already called the gentleman that owns the building. He says, well, he doesn't think he's going to sell it unless his kids. I said, but you don't understand. This is going to be a ministry one day. So I just want you to be prepared, because this is going to be my building one day, right? And so I'm already believing it. And then I have several people who I drive through often and get coffee that's not even there. And just to bring it to fruition, to be my dream. I have people stop there and pray over that place, because that's where I want the fruit of his labor to be, with the people who need us the most.
Yeah, I can tell you one other story, that my mother, when she was a young girl in Fort Wayne, Indiana, she used to go around handing out tracts and sort of giving testimonies and testifying to people and trying to win them to Christ. And she would go into this bar, and eventually they kicked her out of the bar. She said, well, this bar is going to be a church one day. And today in Fort Wayne, Indiana,
that's amazing.
There's a church called the Chocolate Bar.
I love it.
It used to be a bar. So I'd say that you're right on the right path. When you start claiming things for God, he better get ready, because there's greater blessings for him for doing the right thing. And we're excited about that. Well, our time has just blown by. Tommy, any final words that you have, Tommy? And then Rachelle, you can have the last word.
Once again, it's been an absolute pleasure and an honor to talk with our guest, Miss Rachelle Burchette. As you can see, and if you can't, I know I can, the power of voice, spirit, and blessings and anointing that not only professionally, but also personally, really, again, connecting those dots. So I want to say thank you, Rachelle, for spending your time and your wisdom with us this morning.
Well, I just want to say a huge thank you, Eric. It's been a connection from when you spoke at the chamber event and came to our summit and connecting me and letting me meet you. And I just appreciate your enthusiasm and your passion and encouragement to me as well. And anything that you can connect and do, that would be amazing.
Right. And Tommy, she's been a dynamo with doing some things with integrity too. Very, very helpful. So we'll talk that offline. And Tommy will probably follow up with you too, because we like to sort of utilize people that are doing great things. And it's funny that people say, if you want to get something done, find somebody that's busy, too busy.
There you go, right, Eric?
Get things done. So again, thank you for joining us. And Anita says to you, there's so many great talking points.
Oh, thank you so much.
Community, we want to thank you all for joining us for this Christmas Eve show. We're glad that Tommy made it back safely. Want you to love your family. Use some of these communication tips to make sure that you are thinking kind thoughts and utilizing everything you can in terms of humility, love, and prayer to get through these holidays in a wonderful way. We'll see you next week when we'll come back to another diversity conversation. Take care.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye now. It's funny when the mouse is just still working on another